In our lesson today, we're going to look at another area that involves percents and money, and that would be called simple interest. When you deposit money in a bank account, the bank pays you interest for the right to use your money for a period of time. It works the other way as well, all right? If you take out a loan from the bank or if you have a credit card, all right, then you're going to be charged interest for using the bank's money for a period of time. So that's what interest is, all right? The formula that we're going to use right here says I equals PRT. Okay, this is the different formula from the ones that we've been working with, like part equals percent times whole or discount equals percent times original. This formula, I equals PRT, has 4 different components to it. I stands for the interest, P is the principal, R is the rate, and T is the time. And in the box, we're going to define what each one of those are. All right, we just mentioned before interest. Interest is money earned or paid for the use of money. Okay, the bank will pay you interest if you leave your money in the bank account and they can use your money for a period of time. Or you will be charged interest, so you're going to have to pay interest if you borrow money from the bank. Okay, that's what interest is. P stands for principal, which is the original amount deposited into your account or borrowed for a loan. R stands for the rate. This is a percent of the original amount, which again is called the principal. And this will be expressed as a decimal. So just like with all the other percent equations that we've used, the rate will be given as a percentage. We need to convert it into a decimal first. And then T stands for time. The time will always be expressed in years. Okay, so we need to always remember that for the time, we're going to express it out of the number of years. If they give us time in months, we'll talk about what to do a little bit later when we have an example like that. But let's take a look at our first example. It says, suppose that you deposit $400 in a savings account and keep it in the bank for 6 years. The annual rate is 5%. We're going to identify each value in our simple interest formula. Okay, so remember with the words, interest is the principal times the rate times the time. For our equation, that becomes I equals P times R times T. Okay, and reading through here, they tell us that we've deposited $400 into our account. That is the principal amount, the original amount that you started with. So we're going to put 400 in for the principal. Okay. Then they tell us that we're keeping it in the bank for 6 years. T, your time, always has to be expressed in years. Since it already is, we're going to put a 6 for the amount of time. And the annual rate they gave us was 5%. We need to convert that into a decimal first, which is going to come out to be 5/100ths. So let's put 5/100ths in for the rate. We need to calculate I, which is the amount of interest. Notice that I is all alone on the left-hand side of the equal sign. So on the right-hand side, you just have to multiply 400 by 5/100ths and then multiply that value by 6. So if you take out your calculator and you do 400 times 5/100ths and then multiply by 6, you would get I equals 120. And remember, I, the interest, is money, so this is going to be $120. Okay, so in this case, you would earn $120 in interest over the 6 years. In our last example, they gave us the time in the number of years, but in some examples, they'll give you the time in the number of months. So we need to be able to convert the number of months into years. There are 12 months in a year, so in order to convert the months to years, all you need to do is divide the number of months by 12, and that will tell you how many years that would be equal to. Okay, so for example, 6 months, all right, 6 divided by 12 equals a half of a year. Okay, 6 months is equal to a half of a year. 3 months, we would do 3 divided by 12, and that comes out to be 25 hundredths of a year, or 1/4 of a year. Okay, 18 months, 18 divided by 12. Notice the numerator is bigger than the denominator, so this is actually going to come out to be a mixed number, which is going to be 1.5, or 1 5/10. All right, 1 5/10 year. A year and a half is 18 months. So again, if they give you the number of months, you need to convert it into years in order to use the simple interest equation. And in this example, we're told that Arnold puts $580 in a savings account. The account pays 3% simple interest. How much interest will he earn in each amount of time? In letter A, over 5 years, and in letter B, over 6 months. We're going to calculate how much interest Arnold would earn in each time period. Okay, so let's start with A, the 5-year time. We're going to need our equation, which says I equals PRT, interest equals principal times rate times time. Okay, they put $580 in the savings account, which is the principal amount. That's the original amount that you started with. The account pays 3% simple interest. Convert 3% into a decimal, which would be 3 hundredths. And then our time in years for letter A is 5 years. We're calculating I, the amount of interest. So again, I is all alone on the left. In order to get its value, you're going to multiply 580 times 3 hundredths, that should say right there, 3 hundredths, times 5. When you punch that into your calculator, I equals 87. And again, this is money, so the interest earned would be $87. What if Arnold only left the money in the bank for 6 months? Well, again, our formula, I equals PRT. And we're going to have a lot of the same values here. The principal amount was still $580 that he started with. The interest rate is still 3%, which is 3 hundredths. The time this time, though, is 6 months, but we need to, again, convert that into years, which we did right up here. 6 months is a half of a year. So we're going to put in 1/2 as the number of years. To calculate I this time, you're going to do 580 times 3 hundredths times 5/10. And your calculator this time is going to say 8 7/10. But we need to make this look like money. This is going to be $8.70 in interest earned in 6 months. In the next example, we're told that an office manager bought some office supplies on a credit card. The credit card has an interest rate of 9 9/10%. At the end of 3 months, he has to pay $10.52 in interest. So we want to know here in question A, how much did the office manager spend on supplies? Round your answer to the nearest, instead of dollar, let's make this to the nearest cent. Okay, how much did the office manager spend on supplies? Round your answer to the nearest cent. Well, again, we're going to use the equation I equals PRT. When you use a credit card, that's the same as borrowing money from the bank. All right, now, in this example, they've told us that he has to pay $10.52 in interest. So that number is going to go in for I, the interest. Okay. How much did the office manager spend on supplies? How much did he have to borrow from the bank to buy those supplies? The principal is what we're trying to calculate. So we'll put P for principal. R, the interest rate, 9 9/10%. Move the decimal point back twice to the left. That's going to give you 99 thousandths as your rate. And then T, your time in years, well, they said at the end of 3 months, so we have to do 3 divided by 12, which we did before, came out to be 25 hundredths. So our amount of time in years is 25 hundredths. We have to calculate the value of P, the principal. Notice that the variable is on the right-hand side. It's not a loan. It's being multiplied by 99 thousandths and by 25 hundredths. What we're going to do on the right-hand side is first multiply those two values together, so it's just one number that's multiplying the variable. So we're going to have 10 and 52 hundredths equals P times. Now, if you punch 99 thousandths times 25 hundredths into your calculator, you're going to get the decimals 0.02475. Okay? What we need to do now is get the value of P all by itself. Now, I'm just going to rewrite this up here where I've got a little more space. 10 and 52 hundredths equals P times 0.02475. Okay? P's on the right-hand side, and it's being multiplied by that decimal. So we're going to have to divide both sides by that decimal. Divide by 0.02475, and you need to make sure that you do it on both sides. On the right-hand side, all right, that's going to leave you with P, the principal. On the left-hand side, all right, if you type in 10 and 52 hundredths, divided by 0.02475, you're going to get 425 and 5 hundredths repeating, okay? It goes 0.50505 on your calculator. Now, we're going to take this and round it to the nearest cent, which means we have to round it to the nearest hundredth, okay? This number to the nearest hundredth, now remember, there's a 0 in the thousandths place, so that 0 is not enough to round us up. That means our principal amount is going to be $425.05. Okay, so that's how much the office manager spent on supplies. The manager spent $425.05 on supplies. In part B of this question, it says that if he makes no other charges on the credit card and does not make a payment, then how much money will he owe at the end of 3 months? Okay, so we just figured out that the office manager spent $425.05 on the supplies. The manager's going to have to pay all of that money back, and they're going to have to pay back the interest that the bank charged them for borrowing money. Okay, they told us up front here that he has to pay $10.52 in interest. Okay, so to get the total amount, you have to take the principal and add the interest. So the principal borrowed was $425.05, plus the interest was $10.52. So if you add those two numbers together, your total is going to come out to be $435.52, which means that the manager owes $435.52 after 3 months. Okay, so again, you have to pay back the money that you borrowed to buy the supplies, and you have to pay back the amount of interest that the bank charged for borrowing from the bank. In our next example, we're told that Maggie is taking out a student loan for $2,600. She plans on paying off the loan in 3 years. At the end of 3 years, Maggie will have paid $390 in interest. So what was the simple interest rate on the student loan? Okay, so this time we're calculating the rate. We need our interest formula, I equals PRT. Okay, let's substitute in our values. For I, the interest, at the end of 3 years, Maggie will have paid $390 in interest. So that goes in for I. Okay, P, the amount that she borrowed, the principal, she took out a loan for $2,600. Okay, what is the simple interest rate? R is what we're looking for. And our time in years, she plans on paying off the loan in 3 years. So this is what our equation looks like, all right? We have to figure out the value of R, the interest rate. R is on the right-hand side of the equal sign, but it's not alone. It's being multiplied by 2,600 and by 3. So just like we did before, we're going to multiply these two numbers together so that r is only being multiplied by one number. So 390 equals r times, if you punch in 2600 times 3 into your calculator, that's going to give you 7,800. Now r is only being multiplied by one number, 7,800. To get r alone, we'll divide each side by 7,800. Okay, when we do that on the right-hand side, all right, 7,800 divided by itself is 1, which leaves us with r. And on the left-hand side, 390 divided by 7,800 gives us a decimal of 5 hundredths. Okay, so our rate in decimal form is 5 hundredths. We're going to convert that back into a percentage, move the decimal 2 times to the right, and that is equal to 5%. So we can say the simple interest rate is 5%. In our next example, they want us to find the simple interest earned to the nearest cent if the principal was $1,200, the interest rate was 3 9/10%, and our time is 8 months. Okay, so we're using our formula again, I equals PRT. We're going to find the simple interest earned, so we're calculating I, the interest. The principal amount was $1,200. The interest rate, 3 9/10%, move the decimal point back once, twice to the left, and you're going to get 39 thousandths. And then for your time, okay, time is supposed to be in years. They gave us it in months, 8 months. So again, you need to do 8 divided by 12 in order to convert that into years. Now, the problem is when we do this, if you typed 8 divided by 12 into your calculator, you're going to get a decimal of 6/10 repeated, 6/10 repeated. Now, I can't put that repeated decimal right here because then when we go back and try to do 1,200 times 39 thousandths times 6/10 repeated, we would never stop pressing the 6 button, okay? We would never be able to get our answer. So I'm going to just keep this as 8/12, okay? My time in years is going to be 8/12 of a year. And what I'm going to do, since this is a fraction, I'm going to make my other two values fractions by putting them over 1. Okay, so in order to get the value of I, all I have to do is the multiplication on the right-hand side. We have 3 fractions that we're multiplying by each other. What we're going to do is punch in the numerators and multiply them together. And then we're going to punch in the denominators and multiply those together. All right, so let's start with the numerators. The numerators are 1,200, 39 thousandths, and 8. If you were to punch those into your calculator, you would end up with a numerator of 374 4/10. Now for the denominator, that's a little easier. 1 times 1 times 12 is just 12. So in order to get the value of I, now you just have to do this division. 374 4/10 divided by 12, and that gives you an answer of 31 2/10. Okay, well, again, interest is money, so this means that the interest earned is $31.20. Okay, take your fraction of the year, 8/12. All right, make the other two values fractions by putting them over 1. Then multiply your numerators together, your denominators together, and then do 1 division at the end to come up with your answer.